What is the point of these stories? Deuteronomy catalogs the gifts that God will give the people, but after God has already given them to the people, the book of Deuteronomy comes later. It's almost like God is writing a little thank you note to God's self, saying, "Dear me, you have been so extraordinarily generous. Go you." After cataloging all the extravagant gifts God's given to the people, the reminder is to remember. 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 Just like we do when we gather at the communion table. Remember. Remember. Remember that all is gift. Remember that all is to be given. As a whole, Deuteronomy speaks of love and justice for all. My Hebrew professor in seminary told us over and over again that Deuteronomy can be boiled down to say this: you were slaves, do not become slavers. You were marginalized, so draw your circles bigger to include everyone. You were hungry, so make sure your neighbors have enough. You were oppressed, so be a people of liberation. You were unwelcomed, so make the table where you remember me a welcoming table. Remember always that all you have is a gift, and all gifts are given to be shared. Remember always that God promised to bless Abraham, but also instructed that that blessing be shared, that it be a blessing for all. You were slaves, do not become slavers. You were oppressed, do not become oppressors. You were liberated, join the liberation movement. All you have is a gift, so give and give and give, or as disciples of Christ might say, insomuch as you have been healed from your own fragmentation, be a movement for the wholeness of others and of the planet. So here in chapter 8, God says, remember. Somehow remembering the gift enables us to live a type of gratitude that gives birth to generosity, and that generosity matures as it becomes the work of mutual liberation for all people and all that God has created. The point of this story is to remember. And the point of the remembering is gratitude. And the point of the gratitude is generosity. And the end of the generosity is widespread liberation for all the world. What is the point of these stories? Luke's geography is a little bit off in this story. There's not really a place that Jesus would naturally travel through between Jerusalem and Galilee that is neither Samaria nor Judea. But Luke is making a point. This is a deserted place, a dangerous place, a place you wouldn't go if you weren't desperate. And he happens upon lepers, deserted people, believed to be a dangerously contagious people, people you wouldn't go near if you didn't have to, if you weren't desperate. He heals 10, and 1 returns. The text is careful to point out to us that the one who returns to give thanks is a Samaritan. These were marginalized people, people Jesus' family and friends would have looked down on. Repeatedly in Jesus' stories from the margins, these folks see something others can't see. The Samaritans see something others can't see. The woman at the well sees who Jesus is. The Good Samaritan sees who his neighbor really is. This Samaritan sees that something special has happened. Jesus tells him that his faith has healed him, or it could be translated, his faith has saved him, or it could be translated, his faith has made him well, or it could be translated, his faith has made him whole. The disciples of Christ are a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. The Greek word that is translated thanks is the same word that is the root of the word Eucharist, the word that has come to mean communion or the Lord's Supper. Thanks. Eucharist. Deuteronomy told the people to remember. Here, the exemplary Samaritan gives thanks, has a moment of Eucharist, of thanks with Christ, and his entire life is changed. What is the point of these stories? As we come upon a difficult Thanksgiving, a lonely Thanksgiving, for many a scary Thanksgiving as COVID numbers continue to climb, we get these reminders to remember, to see, to give thanks, and to let our blessing become a blessing to others. There's something about remembering that leads to gratitude, and gratitude gives birth to generosity, and generosity, when it is mature, naturally becomes the work of liberation for all people and all that God has created. So I invite you, and please know that I am inviting myself, to settle deeply into gratitude this week. Take note of everything around you: a bird singing, a child playing, colorful leaves, a Zoom meeting that you might be burned out on, but there you are, connected safely with others in the middle of a pandemic. A bite of food that tastes delicious, a drink of water that quenches thirst, a text from a friend, a bed to sleep in, a way to stay dry in the rain, a just law, a movement for ecological justice, a slew of Black Lives Matter signs in your neighborhood, and behind them the neighbors who are joining in a movement for wholeness in a fragmented land. Settle deep, deep into gratitude. Remember, 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 none of this is the fruit of your toil. It is gift, it is gift, it is gift. Remember that it is gift, and so remember that it is to be shared. Let that deep gratitude and remembrance guide you into sincere generosity, and let that lived generosity take root in your very soul, growing to maturity as the work of mutual liberation for all that God has made. What is the point of these stories? As with all of God's stories, they remind us that all is gift and lead us into the sharing of the gift. As with all of God's stories, they remind us that God moves toward wholeness in a fragmented world, and they remind us that we are invited to join in that movement. Especially on Thanksgiving, as we gather and remember that this land was stolen violently, we are invited into a movement of gratitude, generosity, and liberation, a movement for wholeness. Amen.